You would expect him to feel a little defeated, a little gaunt, anything like that, but it wasn't that case.
Long crime, Elizabeth Vulai. But also, I am joined by criminal defense attorney Nima Rahmani. Good to see you. Thank you.
Kind of like rushing a little bit. I understand that they're still getting like subpoenas are being responded to still.
Who sat by Justin. Then it was followed by Chance, the twins, Jesse and Delilah, Quincy, and then Christian.
I don't know if there'll necessarily be new charges against P. Diddy, maybe, or, maybe more identifiable victims.
Expecting there to be arguments about the bail or the bond. That really didn't happen. And the judge ordered that.
Is push this case as quickly as possible, because we know under the Speedy Trial Act, unless they waive time or time is
interesting, because I think, we have seen many photos, videos of Sean Combs, aka Diddy, through the Associated Press.
An attorney with us now. We have Ariel. She's joining us now. So who do you think that this?
He appeared confident. He stood tall, but most importantly and most notably, when he walked inside the courtroom, the first thing that he looked at was his family.
In terms of presenting the electronic evidence or getting their witnesses lined up, it may be part and parcel of the defense's strategy to push this case to trial as quickly as possible.
Meanwhile, there are other reports that Diddy has stopped eating. This could be because he isn't enjoying the food, but it also could be because he's paranoid that someone is out to get him and may slip poison into
it. It appears that the rapper's actions in jail and court are intended to send a message. Diddy and his attorneys have been trying everything in their power to keep the rapper out of jail, but so far, they have been utterly ineffective. The rapper's family appears to be supporting him and speaking out for him. Let's examine the bizarre events that have occurred, including Diddy's fear that he could be killed while incarcerated, what rival Suge Knight said about it, and why he appeared uneasy in court recently. Everyone has been talking non-stop about Diddy's trial, but how is the man doing? It seems like he's been making an effort to show that he's at his best, but given what we know about him, that probably won't last. Despite his lawyers' best efforts to paint Diddy as an innocent man, it's clear that Diddy has essentially been found guilty in a court of public opinion.
Through Instagram. And so to see him kind of in person after being in jail for 3 weeks now was pretty interesting, to say the least. And I say that by being that you would expect him to feel a little defeated, a little gaunt, anything like that. But it wasn't that case. He appeared confident. He stood tall. But most importantly and most notably, when he walked inside the courtroom, the first thing that he looked at was his family. As soon as he saw his family, he just lit up. Another thing to note too is he wasn't shackled, but he was wearing a khaki prison-like jumpsuit when he appeared inside court, and his family appeared on their end very just happy to see him. Now, I will say when I was inside the courtroom, I was a little bit towards the back right side of the gallery, and so for seeing Sean Combs, I had to look through a few heads and stuff like that. But again, he appeared just kind of confident walking inside that courtroom, and might have just been the look.
Of course, that doesn't stop the federal government from carrying out its duties, but why do people believe that Diddy is essentially threatening people in court? What unsettling messages are being spread, for starters? Diddy appeared assured and unrepentant during his hearing, and his family was there to support him, giving the impression that they were a whole family.
Combs, aka King. And so again, once they all saw their father, they all smiled at him, waved at him. And even when we were all leaving the courthouse today, Diddy just blew kisses at his mother and his family members. They didn't say much of anything. I wasn't outside when they had first entered the courthouse, so I'm not sure if they said anything to the press. Previously, they had been very quiet whenever they had entered the courtroom.
Naturally, despite his repeated requests for bail, it appears that judges are determined to keep him incarcerated at the Metropolitan Detention Center. However, there is still much to be explored, as the most recent hearing revealed that the federal authorities were still in the process of retrieving a significant amount of data from the devices that were found during the
defendant, Sean Combs, stay inside the MDNC, which we know the Metropolitan Detention Center in Brooklyn, New York. And so as far as what we know now is that we know May 5th is going to be the date, tentatively, that the trial does begin. So we have a lot of stuff that we're expecting to see. So the data mainly still has to be extracted. Now, the government was kind of talking about just some of the devices are a little bit older, so the government in turn is kind of catching up to the technology there. But they say at the airport they seized 9 different devices. devices. 7 of those have been extracted so far. At Miami, 36 different devices were seized. 29 were extracted. And in LA, 51 devices were seized. 24 have been extracted, They say the 8 terabytes of data, that information could come about in the next 2 weeks or so. And they're working on the production, another production of the subpoena returns. And so the defense, pretty much didn't object to too much, inside the courtroom today. Agnifilo also, appeared kind of confident, during his arguments. I know a lot of people were kind of expecting for the bail or bond argument to be happening, but that didn't happen. And it appeared that, the defense kind of, I'm trying to find the right word here, but they were pretty much complying with all the prosecution's arguments and plan to kind of have everything all good and set to go by May. Now, by the time the end of the year is to happen, I forgot one big turn right here. They did mention that a potential superseding.
A former federal prosecutor from FedEdder offered commentary on the current processes, stating that it was improbable that the case would truly proceed to trial in May 2025 due to the overwhelming amount of material that needed to be examined, which might potentially be used by the defense.
So much. Happy to have you both here. Nima, I'll start with you. I mean, the idea of a May 2025 trial date, and we talked about it before on the show, that Sean Combs, if he thinks he's going to be locked up, obviously wants to go to trial as soon as possible. I get it. He's kind of putting the prosecution's feet to the fire. But you heard Elizabeth. Terabytes of data, all this to go through, a production schedule. This really going to happen in May, this trial?
Probably not, but Diddy's lawyers may want to jam up the government if they think there's any chance they're not ready in terms of presenting the electronic evidence or getting their witnesses lined up. It may be part and parcel of the defense's strategy to push this case to trial as quickly as possible. Obviously, we know Combs is in custody, so there's really no point for him to wait. We know that the defense case is going to be limited. When Judge Subramanian asked for a time estimate today, the prosecution gave 3 weeks. The defense only gave 1 week, which means that they're going to base this case mostly on.
Naturally, this does not imply that the government is incompetent. Numerous analysts have pointed out how the RICO charges will enable the feds to prosecute Diddy for a variety of offenses.
So they don't even have all their evidence together yet. And so demanding a speedy trial really is going to force the government to get their act together really fast and not have that additional time. But I think that the government was also smart in not overcomplicating this case by making it much bigger than it needed to be. Like, for instance, what happened down in, y'all's neck of the woods in Atlanta with the YSL RICO trial that's going on. So, you've got a much simpler, indictment, 14 pages long, really one identifiable victim, but I think that there's probably others that are contained within it. So we'll see if that May date sticks. If there's superseding indictments, it's probably going to get continued, I would think, because there's just...
Even the idea of the feds bringing in a new defendant has been floated, which would reduce Diddy's influence over the case because he would no longer be the only defendant and many others would have to weigh in on what's best for.
But I think that you're also going to maybe potentially see some co-conspirators that are identified that played a significant role in this vast conspiracy that's taken place over the course of the last 30 years. So with other defendants involved, that can also Sean Combs will be in less control over when this trial goes and how it plays out.
Well, let's talk, though, about the fact the feds don't play. I mean, generally, they don't bring a case until they have their ducks in a row and the evidence ready to go. And so I have to believe that, yes, some of those things might cause delays, and it's a great defense team. But I also think the feds are well prepared with evidence on hand to proceed against him.
Oh, yeah.
Additionally, even though Diddy's legal team is attempting to portray any bizarre parties as consenting, if the 120 additional allegations that attorney Tony Busby mentioned were to be made, things would be different. Because minors are incapable of giving consent, another complex layer.
Excluded, the government technically has to get this to trial within 70 days.
So let me just follow up on that. If he's hit with a superseding indictment, right? And we don't know what those charges could be. We don't know if there could be multiple defendants. We don't know if they're respect to potentially minors. No, am I crazy to think that there's no way this trial is then going to happen in May?
It's unlikely, especially if there's a superseding indictment involving minors, because minors present a completely different set of circumstances. Because we know through his lawyers, Combs is arguing that the sexual activity happened but it was consensual. Of course, for sex trafficking, you need one of those three elements: force, fraud, or coercion. Obviously, minors cannot consent to any sexual activity, so that would be a very different defense entirely. The defense would have to be that the activity didn't happen at all and the individuals are lying. So I think that's going to be the potential game changer if we do get the minors wrapped up into a superseding indictment. And we know, at least if you believe the civil attorneys, there are 25 minor victims, one of which is as young as 9.
And those suits haven't been filed yet, but that's what Tony Busby.
The tape of an A-lister that is reportedly making the rounds in Hollywood at the moment is another item that people believe Diddy was directly involved in revealing from prison. Some believe the rapper was sending a message to people telling them to keep quiet or he would damage their reputation.
Star is that we've got this unidentified male, and how could this be impacting the case?
I know who it is, which I'm not going to say out of respect. But how is it going to impact the case? I think the impact would be more so if that person was revealed. It would be, I think, shocking to everyone, kind of shocking, but not shocking at the same time. And I think it would just goes to show about the pattern of Mr. Combs' behavior against other people, like Mrs. Ventura. And
one of the main reasons Diddy has been denied bail multiple times is because the feds have previously stated that they have proof of Diddy attempting to contact witnesses in order to intimidate or pressure them.